I am Angela and I am grouped with Blake Ashley, Vanessa Aristizabal, and Ariana Sequenza. Blake and Ariana hail from the US and Vanessa is from Colombia.
Hi, I'm Aidan, and my group mates were Haley Reinberg and Alex Manticas from the USA, and Mohammed Jafal from Lebanon, although he studies in Italy right now.
Hi, I'm Gab, and I was groupmates with Anais from France, but currently studying in the USA, Cameron from the USA, and Timon from the Netherlands.
Hi, I'm Haley, and my group mates include Alexandra Tristan, Michael Calabrese, and Dexter Reed, who all come from the United States, and Sebastian Culma Garcia from Colombia.
Hi, I'm Nate, and my group mates were Benedetta from Italy, Aiden and Colby from the US, and Joseph from Ghana.
Our
Our
group
group
chose
chose
Moe's
Moe's Some problems enumerated are Moe's Burger's overseas business segment posted a loss in the last fiscal year due to a delay in responding to changes in the business environment, including rising raw material prices and shifts in consumer purchasing behavior after COVID 19.
The fast food industry has an image of low prices, but the cost ratio of ingredients tends to be higher than in other food service categories.
Most Burger has withdrawn from several countries due to mismatched market needs, product fit, and cost structures. For example, the withdrawal from Guangzhou, China was driven by rent price increases following economic development.
Most Burger faces challenges in managing ingredient costs while maintaining competitive pricing and profitability.
However, overall, Moss Burger is seeking recommendations from us on how to strategically focus on new markets and enter them effectively.
My group also chose Moe's Burger, and it was chosen through a democratic vote. We chose this company perhaps because this brand was the most familiar to us globally, and we wanted to explore other countries that Moe's Burger could potentially tackle, that being the UK.
After some research, my group mates and I discovered that India is a nation with dense urban areas and with a high growth potential in the food sector attributed to rising disposable income and a high population density. This makes it a very attractive place for fast food businesses such as Moe's Burger to expand into.
My group noticed that Moe's Burger found themselves stuck in between branding themselves as a healthier alternative and as a fast food chain. Most Burger is observed to have difficulty in identifying a gap within the food service industry that they can capitalize on, as well as potential markets they can integrate into using their strength and popularity among more Asian markets. Because of this, we chose to expand into the United States via joint ventures specifically targeting the states where a high number of Asian population resides in, such as California, which has a high number of Japanese, Chinese, and Filipino residents.
My group noticed that Moe's Burger has untapped potential within the South Korean market. Although Moe's already has branches in that country, we felt that Moe's presence was overall underwhelming compared to what was expected of them, considering that the cultural affinity between Japan and South Korea, alongside the similarities in food preferences, were favorable for Moe's.
My group were most familiar with the market in the US as most of them are geographically located in America. They think that the US, as one of the largest and most diverse consumer markets globally, offers significant growth opportunities for international food chains like Moss Burger. The sheer size of the US market presents a vast customer base and revenue potential for expansion. Furthermore, they cited that the US market is known for its diverse culinary landscape and evolving consumer preferences, where there is a growing interest in international cuisines and flavors, making it conducive for a brand like Moss Burger. Applying what I learned to the market entry simulations and Hofstede's cultural dimensions, I recommended to our group the use of joint venture with sub-franchising market entry mode. This is because the high cultural distance would necessitate a strategy that allows for the company to leverage on the expertise and knowledge of local partners who have a deep understanding of the US market, consumer preferences, and regulatory requirements. The marketing mix were also an essential consideration for our group. Serving portions and innovative menu offerings were highlighted to be some strategies that can help Moss Burger enter the market. We were also particular with the states they can expand to, specifically Miami of the Eastern Coast.
My group wanted to enter the UK market using own subsidiaries. The complete control over the different locations will allow Moe's Burger to better manage its brand image and reputation. My group wanted to enter the UK market.
In order to integrate into the American market, my group decided on several marketing efforts, such as partnerships with local figures and businesses, and pushes for digital marketing efforts via social media platforms such as Instagram, TikTok, and Facebook. Content marketing via blogs and Moe's official website was also proposed, along with suggestions on how to improve the UI and UX of their website to ensure optimal information dissemination regarding their stands and product offerings. They should also center their marketing strategy and unique selling proposition around the healthiness, freshness, and quality of their products compared to other chains.
My group mates and I agreed on the importance of making Moe's Burger stand out in the saturated local market it was about to enter. After discussion, we agreed that it would be best for them to market themselves as an authentically Japanese fast food restaurant, with an emphasis on their signature yakiniku rice burger. This would both stick to the focus of the company of innovative and quality products, and differentiate them from the usual local fast food chain that you would find in India. My groupmates and I agreed on the importance of making Moe's Burger stand out in their saturated local.
My group recommended that Moe's Burger invest and expand more into South Korea to ensure that it takes full advantage of the low cultural differences between Japan and South Korea. In consideration of the similarities between the culture, palate, and traditions of the two countries, we decided that it would bring Moe's Burger the biggest advantage when expanding further into the South Korean market. My group recommended that Moe's Burger invest and expand more into South Korea to ensure that it takes full advantage of the low cultural differences between Japan and South Korea. In consideration of the similarities between the culture, palate, and traditions of the two countries, we decided that it would bring Moe's Burger.
Having to adapt to their context, as you could say, our cultural dynamic is one Asian versus three Americans. I really had to think outside of the confines of the Philippines, and in the process, I learned to identify certain nuances in their perspectives, such as they have little knowledge of Asian culture. It was also a relief that despite it, there is still high regard or respect upheld between all members, that no one is superior in ethnicities or insights more than the other, even if someone could be less capable in speaking the language or knowing about the culture of the other.
For me, I learned a very important lesson on leadership and accountability, and how it can be conducted within a group of people that have just met. No one really wanted to be the leader. Rather, we had pseudo-leaders that would try to take charge, yet people weren't quite following their direction. So one way that we solved this problem was to take turns being the leader every week, in order to take turns holding each groupmate accountable. For me, I learned a very important lesson on leadership and accountability, and how it can be.
I learned to be more empathetic and open when dealing with others. Understanding that we all come from different backgrounds and have varying proficiencies in English, I learned that it was important to be empathetic when working with others. Learning to adjust to the pace and working style of my groupmates was also important, as this ensured that we all worked well and efficiently.
In my experience, I was grouped with people with kind of strong personalities. So it made it hard for me to get my opinions and thoughts in sometimes. So I had to learn to be a little bit more assertive and a little bit more open to sharing my ideas with people, since usually I would be a much more quiet person. But I realized that as I was communicating with my groupmates, I wouldn't be able to get my ideas out if I was just to be quiet.
I had to learn how to assert myself while also acting as a team player. My groupmate from France was very hands-on and always wanted to do the majority of the work, so I had to get used to being straightforward with her and opening up the possibility of dividing the work equally among the rest of the group. Apart from this, from a team player standpoint, I had to pay attention to the quality of work coming from my groupmates from the US and the Netherlands, because they often submit their work last minute, but the quality is somewhat subpar, so I had to adjust accordingly to the tendencies and habits of my groupmates.
A challenge I encountered is having to suggest multiple improvements that we could apply on our workload and quality of output, but not having to execute those suggestions because of the diversity of commitments and capabilities from our team members in general.
Aside from time differences making communication much harder, I also struggled with the cultural differences between my groupmates and I. They were used to doing things at a much faster pace than I am used to, so we never really had the brainstorming period that I am accustomed to. This meant that if I or anyone else in the group had any ideas on the direction we were taking our project, we had to be more willing to voice it out during the flow of our work. So I had to learn to do this as we went along in the project, and so did my groupmates.
I think one of our biggest challenges was coming up with a proper schedule of meeting up. Especially with how different our time zones were, we had to make do with working asynchronously, which usually resulted in a lot of cramming. Procrastination really affects the quality of work, so we had extra workload the coming weeks just trying to revise our previous work.
A challenge I experienced involved working with my teammates given the time zone differences, which made communicating with everyone harder since my teammates were all on similar time zones except me. This made meeting and aligning with the team very difficult as we were 12 hours ahead of them. So given this, I made sure to constantly communicate with my group regarding schedule conflicts in advance, as well as learn to adjust my working hours to match theirs to ensure that we are able to work properly together.
A challenge I encountered was the difference in work ethic. We would all submit our work outputs as soon as possible or last minute. Alongside this, the quality of work also differed heavily among the different members of the group. Others similarly wanted to complete the weekly task for the sake of submitting, while others wanted high-quality work for every submission.
There were moments that were funny enough not to mention. In Filipino terms, you can call it sabog moments. So for instance, I would talk in meetings or type in some Konya terms such as na lang, and consciously thinking that I am talking with my Athenian friends. They would ask me to clarify what I said, and I would go on explaining that it was my bad. There are some norms in our usual language that definitely is unrelatable to them, and I have to explain that it is because of having to be used to combining English and Filipino.
Through this project, I learned to be more conscious of how I spoke and type given the language barriers, as I realized just how often I would incorporate Filipino words such as lang and kasi into my speech, which would cause misunderstandings to arise within my group. Through this project, I learned to be more conscious of how I spoke and type given the language barriers, as I realized just how often
I didn't particularly have to adjust when it came to communicating with my group mates. We were all speaking in a more formal tone with each other, perhaps due to our unfamiliarity with each other, but I found myself more comfortable with this manner of communication. I just had to change the tone of my messages from time to time to assure my group mates that I wasn't upset and to make sure that there weren't any misunderstandings.
Despite the cultural differences and barriers, there are still moments when you realize we still have common grounds, and it is important to acknowledge them and capitalize on them so that you can establish better relationships and interactions with people from different racial, cultural, working backgrounds.
So, this experience taught me that it is important to understand and to adjust to the people that you communicate with. This leads to not only better understanding, but also better morale. In my case, after having communicated with my groupmates for a while, I understood that they wanted less informal talk and more focus on the project. So I was able to adjust to that and became more focused on the project and more assertive in my thoughts on the project. And that led to better communication for us while working and also from me to me getting to know them better afterwards.
Although our habits and tendencies may differ, we're bound to spot some similarities as well. Communicating with others, especially foreigners, may seem daunting at first, but just give it some time. Understand that both of you come from different backgrounds and just make ends meet. Communication will only work if all parties come together to cooperate.
working with others is like a two-way street. For a collaboration to be successful, both sides must be willing to adjust to each other and come to a more favorable compromise for both parties to benefit. Just as my groupmates adjusted to my schedule, I also worked on adjusting my working times to match theirs in order to make working with each other more convenient.